Mental colonialism is a phenomenon that takes place when a certain country or group dominates or tries to impose their cultural values, beliefs, knowledge, education system, etc., over another culture.
Or you have Ibn Khaldun, the father of sociology. You have Ibn Rushd, remarkable contribution in theological philosophy and epistemology in general. You have Jabir ibn al-Hayyan, the true father of chemistry. You have Ahmed Zuhail, the father of femtochemistry. The Middle East has so many fathers of that the rest of the world honestly should just start calling us daddy.
السلام عليكم.
ورحمة الله وبركاته. كيف الحال مستر دكتور إبراهيم؟
Alhamdulillah, I am doing very well. How are you, Mr. Amr?
Wallahi, I'm always good when I get to see your beautiful face, my friend.
Likewise.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm a bit excited today.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm a bit excited because this took a lot of preparation and we're finally here. I hope that all of that preparation was worth it.
Inshallah. Some would say we might have done this twice, but we'll see about the quality later on. Mr. Ibrahim, let's dive right into it. Mr. Ibrahim.
Inshallah.
I personally have heard of the word colonialism, when a particular nation tends to be extremely greedy and they want to exploit and abuse the resources of a different nation, whether it's through the natural resources or the people. And so they attack that country, and then they form a base, and then they extract as much as they can from the country before they go back. If they go back, maybe it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, a decade, 500. That's colonialism. Okay. An interesting term that I've come across as of late is mental colonialism. What the hell is that?
Excellent question, Amr. Unfortunately, I was not very much aware of this term, and I think it is very unfortunate that we're not having enough conversation about this. Mental colonialism, what is that? Let's unpack a bit. I think to put it very simply, mental colonialism is a phenomenon that takes place when a certain country or group dominates or tries to impose their cultural values, beliefs, knowledge, education system, etc., over another culture. It is a concept that highlights the power dynamics inherent in cultural interaction and the impact of colonization on the mental and psychological aspects of the colonized people. Historically, yeah.
So you're saying that a nation or a particular culture around the world, instead of having to bring their military forces all the way across seas or across borders to exploit the people of a particular nation, they could just do it via Bluetooth remotely, and then they do that by targeting my mind.
Yeah, so basically this is exactly what I'm saying. You don't need to be physically, like, colonization doesn't necessarily have to be only a physical thing. It can be a mental thing, right? And it can have long-term effects on societies and civilizations that can pass on to generations. Now, normally when we talk about mental colonialism, at least in the historical context, we know that there were colonial powers and they physically overtook other countries and they controlled the territories, but they also sought out to reshape the thought process and the attitude and the identity of the colonized population. And why this happened is because the colonizers deemed themselves as superior, and they wanted to civilize or enlighten the colonized people by eradicating, or at the very least marginalizing, their indigenous knowledge, practice, way of life, and to some extent even belief.
This is about to get spicy. Welcome to the third episode of the Junes podcast. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very well. This is an extremely equally an interesting and scary concept to be aware of, because you slowly realize the subtle forces that are kind of trying to control your minds. And this is not some form of dystopian 1984 type of story. No. This is something that's happening here, now, today. And it's only getting worse as the methods mostly through technology, that are used to achieve that state of mental colonization, become more capable. So maybe this episode could give you some insight on how exactly mental colonialism has affected our people in the Middle East and elsewhere. Mr. Ibrahim, what should we dig into first?
Well, let's first try to tell everyone why we personally care about mental colonialism and why they should care about mental colonialism. Why is it relevant to our everyday life? Are we mentally colonized? That is something that every one of us should ask ourselves, because if you don't ask yourself, you will never know that this problem exists in your life. I know this firsthand because I am a victim of it, or at least was. And I think that one of the things that helped me overcome this is just simply asking myself that question. So, Amr, why do you care about mental colonialism?
Similar to you, my friend, I was also a victim. And it's extremely important to note that for you to be a victim of mental colonialism, you don't need to be mentally weak. No, no, no. Because the methods that are used to achieve that are extremely sophisticated, to the point that even if you think that you're smart enough to go against it, they work in very subtle ways to the intrinsic wirings of your brain that you just can't help it unless you're aware. And hence this episode where we're trying to raise awareness and bring focus to that. So why do I care? Back to the question. Why do I care? Because when you're a victim of mental colonialism, you lack self-confidence in your ability to do something for yourself and for your people. When you've been mentally colonized for a long enough time, you lose all hope in being the maker of your own decision. And rather than being the individual or the community that is able to find solutions for themselves, you look to other nations, other cultures that might necessarily not have your best interest at heart. We don't live in Disneyland, unfortunately. You reach out to those people and you depend on them fully for your own well-being. And that's something that could be extremely, extremely scary. Anyone that has depended on someone that does not have their best intent at heart, you know what I'm talking about. So it limits not just the community, it limits you personally in terms of your perception of how much you can achieve. It makes you miss out on so many great things in your own community as well. It forces you to stray away from your culture, even though the things that in your culture might be really, really good for you, like such as community values, for instance, or being an integrated part of your society, your social circle. Let's say that's emphasized, which is in the Middle East very much emphasized. Let's say you're being colonized mentally in a way to take you away from that idea and perhaps shove the idea of being an individualistic and person that's a bit away from everyone else, and the world revolves around you. Maybe that's not the best of things to fall a trap to.
Okay, if that is the case, I would like to ask you, how did you yourself experience being mentally colonized? Like, I mean, when does this start? Does it start at an early stage? Does someone come and he tries to implement it in your mind? Is our educational system to be blamed? Is it the culture? Is it the society? Is it our parents? Like, who's the culprit behind all of this?
In 1997, when I was born, I think that's around the time where it started. So my parents, as with any good pair of parents, they always want to provide the best for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when an entire community has wholeheartedly agreed that what is best for you is anything that's different from your current society and your current culture, it's very difficult for parents to think differently from that. So for instance, if the perception is that people who speak English in your society, even though perhaps everyone in your society speaks Arabic instead, and it would be much easier to communicate ideas that would otherwise not be communicated in English, and we'll get into that later. But if the perception is that knowing how to speak English and not being able to speak Arabic is something that makes your child of higher social status in your community, you're probably going to give a bit more focus to the English language than you would with the Arabic language. And that's something that has happened to me. I mean, ever since I was in kindergarten, the learning was fully in English, and the Arabic classes, in the same way that they are in any system that's not Arabic, British curriculum, American, whatever it is, very, very, very little emphasis is put on it. And even in those classes, no one really cares. There was just this student that I was helping for this exam that she has here in New York to prove that she's able to speak in English and Arabic. And then while I was assessing her Arabic was not the best, right? So I recommended I recommended that she start reading a couple of Arabic books to improve her Arabic. And then she came back at me with this question: what's the point? I'm never gonna need Arabic in my life ever again. I'm not gonna be an Arabic teacher. So what's the point? And for you to have that internalized in your mind is extremely scary, because knowing your own language has so many important benefits. And again, we'll get into that later. But yeah, that was one of the examples of how it started on at a very early age for me. What about you, Brian? Tell me, how has mental colonization started for you? And maybe tell us after that why you care about it.
So I'm glad you brought this up. And I think that if, no matter how far back I go and think about this, the educational system is the first stage where we start to get mentally colonized, right? Because there was a perception around us when we were growing up that those who speak English are deemed to be smarter or more intelligent, even though that is not a metric by far. But I know that in Pakistan, those who are speaking English are considered to be more educated and more intelligent by default, which is crazy if you think about it. Like, when did a language or the ability to speak a language became an assessment of intelligence? That is never the case. And certain people were given certain types of privileges as well because they could speak English. Like, those who were studying in the British curriculum were deemed, as the superior students, and they would represent the school, and they would be looked up as, the role models in the future of the society, as opposed to those who would take the more, lower approach of studying in an Arabic section, or for example, in a Pakistani section. Those are those who did not make it to the British section, right? Those are the lower end of the students and the misfits and those who have no hope for the future. Funny. And this is not good, because I mean, what is it that we're teaching our kids at that stage? That our language and culture is to be looked down on, and those who speak the language of their colonizers is to be deemed as better than others. This never made sense to me. I mean, for those who don't know, Pakistan was part of India, and India was a colony of British. So the British did rule over us for some years, and with their rule came certain, mindset change, as every colonizers do. So we are heavily influenced by, the British culture, or the English culture, I would say. And that's where the roots of our colonialism takes place. Everyone in my country, unfortunately, dreams about leaving their home country and becoming, either American or British, and this is their dream. And those who achieve that dream are considered as, the lucky ones. And the sad thing is that those who end up going outside, they think that it is okay for them to hide their identity. So if you ask them, where are you from? They're like, I'm British. You do not look British, man. It's very obvious.
What do you mean I'm not British? Hey.
And, that to me is sad, because that only tells me that you have a sense of insecurity, and you have a sense of inferiority. And that inferiority is rooted deep, deep down in you. And sometimes it's not because it is conscious decision. It's just that, the culture and the society that you've been brought up to have taught you that this is how you need to do. I can go on and on and on, but I mean, this, let me just segue from this into why I care about mental colonialism. The reason I care about this is because there was a period of time where I was looking around at my people, Pakistani people, and I was asking, Why is it that they are not, proud of their culture? Why is it that they don't feel that pride, that of their nationalities? Like there was always this looming fear within them that, oh, someone would know that we're Pakistani and we are not as privileged. That never made sense to me. And, the consequence of this was a consequence of mental colonialism, obviously. And that's why I cared, because as time goes on, I realized that we are losing our culture, we're losing our language, we're losing our mindset, the thought process, and the heritage that goes alongside it. And this is such an unfortunate thing, because Amr will tell you later on as to why I really care about this. But with the loss of language goes, you lose many things, like the way you represent yourself, the way you express yourself. Language is not a small thing. And I'll like, Amr, please tell them why language is so important. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm a Pakistani. I speak Punjabi, I speak Urdu, I speak English, and I speak Arabic. But I have such high regards for Arabic language. And as someone who was born and raised in UAE, and he spent most of his time interacting with the Arabs, it is such a shame that this language has been losing its importance amongst the youth. Bad, very bad.
Hayyak El Ali. And just, I have two disclaimers, right? Because people watching this now could very rightly so ask the question, why are these guys not talking in their native language? Why isn't Am speaking in Arabic, or why isn't Ibrahim speaking in Urdu or Punjabi, for example? Well, two reasons for that. First is because we speak different languages, and that's an obvious issue here. And two is because it is also an effect of this mental colonization that we both have been through. I mean, you end up in a state where the language that is used to communicate ideas, the default language that is used to communicate comprehensive and elaborate ideas, is the English language. So naturally, when you come across, if you're someone that's just, coming of age, and you're realizing that there's this entire world of ideas and remarkable, thought leaders around the world, and all of them speak English, you start thinking, hey, maybe this English language and everything associated with anything English, perhaps that is indeed superior, because everything I'm seeing is related to English. So this is an issue. But so, like I was saying, we were also victims of this mental colonization. So, but to the point that my Arabic, although I'm constantly trying to work on it, for instance, myself, is not as good enough as my English to be able to communicate the ideas that I would like. But that's a problem that I'm working on, and inshallah, in time, in due time, it will shift. But the hope is to one day have subtitles both in Urdu, Arabic, or Punjabi, so that we can reach as much of a large audience as we possibly can. This idea of that Ibrahim mentioned about the youth wanting to leave their nations. Look, we need to be pragmatic here, okay? The youth in our countries as of now, they're looking for opportunities, right? And in the majority of our countries, there aren't great opportunities at the moment. So it's completely justifiable that they want to leave. The thing that's concerning is that not only do they want to leave for the opportunity, no. They want to leave and have nothing related to their culture. They want to leave everything behind. They want to move to a different country and completely forget about their culture, about their identity, and then, like Ibrahim also said, mask the fact that they were ever coming from this, rather than being proud that, hey, I migrated or I moved to this different place so that I can seek better opportunities, and this is the fortitude of my people. Okay, I'm Pakistani. I left all the way from Pakistan or the UAE, and now I'm looking for a better opportunity. I worked hard on myself and I have achieved. Look at me, I'm Pakistani. No, they want to seamlessly, so that no one looks at who they are, want to seamlessly integrate into whatever society they have moved to, so that no one associates them with their actual culture, which is extremely scary. I mean, when you've reached to that stage of mental colonialism, you should perhaps start reconsidering what forces have come to play to make you think this way. And now
I need to mention another thing, like just to elaborate on how deeply this goes. In our countries, the standard of beauty, one of the standards of beauty, is how
Is you.
white
Is you,
white.
Ibrahim.
Thank you so much.
MashaAllah.
One of the standards of beauty in our country is how white you are, and certain women would go out of their way to whiten themselves more than the natural look, because it is deemed as prettier. And one of the reasons why that is because we were colonized by white people. Now, we're no longer colonized by the white people. We, when I think about it, there should be a different standard of beauty for people who are indigenous, right? Because they look different, but that is not the case. And it still is looming around in our society that, you should be whiter. If you are white, by default, you are prettier. That is one of the reasons why people, or the society as in large, think of it like that, is because of mental colonialism. There's something that is influencing our thought process or our perception. And why that is happening is because exactly of this issue. And for those who are Pakistani, I don't need to elaborate as to why this is an issue. Think of it from a perspective of a woman who is Pakistani and she's not that white, how others are perceiving her. It's not the best environment for her, right? What is
I'm recalling this Fair and Lovely ad that I used to see on TV, where they start off with a brown skin tone, like a caramel type of skin tone, and then it shifts slowly after usage of Fair and Lovely to complete pale white. And that, is the epitome of beauty. And when we were watching it at the time, we we're like, okay, this makes sense. And now when we're thinking back at what the hell is going on, I'm probably gonna add it. I'm gonna add it to the video with another example. There was I think it was a Chinese ad, I think, where they put this. Oh my God! They put this black guy in a washing machine with like detergent, and then he came out like fair white Asian. and that was good advertisement for the product. Like, what are you guys onto? What's going on here?
Yeah. So you see that the colonizers have left long ago, but the society is doing their job of that reforming. It's reforming the culture around it, and it's very effective. I mean, there's a whole industry of fashion and beauty behind it. But anyways, let's.
I want to add one thing to this, and in this particular example, let's say the Fair and Lovely example in particular, it's not like the company or like there was like a British CEO behind it that intentionally asked people to make this ad. No. That's why mental colonialism is so scary. It's contagious to the point that if you're the person that has produced the force to start mental colonization of a particular people, you spread it and then you just leave it be and watch it burn. Look at them. The only reason Fair and Lovely would come out with such an ad is because they know that the people in their cultures actually value looking like that, looking white. So it's only because they know that their customer base would be actually interested in such a product. But you don't need to be, that's the powerful thing about it. You don't need to be active in your act of colonizing as you would when you're physically colonizing or militarily colonizing a different country.
Okay, so I want to give everyone another example as to what is it in our modern society, in our current times, that is influencing this? Because you need to know what is influencing, because those are the roots of the problem. And unless you know the root of the problem, you will not be able to find a solution, right? So, and there's no point of just talking about the problem. We're just going to highlight the problem, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to tackle this. But let's give you another example. Let's talk about, media representation, because media plays a big role into, mental colonialism. I mean, the example of Fair and Lovely is the perfect segue into this. That type of media content only serves to enhance that type of, mentality. It is reinforcing that sense of inferiority within us by showing us these types of, content. And even in the movies, like think about it in the movies, what type of perception do people have of certain people who are living outside and they have left their indigenous, culture and heritage? they are not deemed as like they're not looked upon in a negative sense. They're looked upon in, the higher class, the privileged ones, the elite class. Like that's the perception that they have. And my question is, why is that case?
I don't know. I for the longest time, I truly thought that, we were all actually veiled people in the movies, and we all looked like the villain in Iron Man. It was only recently that I realized that perhaps, we have a bit of diversity in our color palette. But, for the longest time, this is what I thought we look like, the majority of us, thanks to media representation. But, as I come to look around at my society and realize that, not all of us look like this, and not all of us have the same demeanor.
I mean, he kind of look like you.
Cut. So when the people normally very much underestimate the prowess of media, and when there's this concept called the mere exposure effect, a well-studied psychological concept. If you get exposed to something over and over and over and over again, you become more relaxed to it. You become more comfortable with the idea. That's why whenever you go to an airport, for example, in a different country, and you see all sorts of different restaurants that you don't understand the names of, but you see a McDonald's, you're naturally gravitated towards it, because it's not because that you love McDonald's in particular, maybe you do, but it's not because of that, but it's because it's what you've seen, it's what your brain has grown accustomed to over and over and over again. And so an extension of that, if the image that you're exposed to is of a terrorist Arab, or linking that, anger with a beard, or someone coming from anywhere that's, not white, if that's the image that you constantly keep seeing, it's not because you're racist that you are going to think that, okay, indeed, this person is a terrorist. No. It's because your brain has been attacked enough times for you to have this as the default perception. And now your fault at this point is not necessarily for being racist. It's for not being aware of how your mind was played with, which is why it's extremely important for people to read into psychology and look into the forces that constantly try to etch away at your mind to exploit you, and then to hurt other people as well. And so when you do that, not only do you limit the interaction between people across the globe, because they have these stereotypes, that very harmful, incorrect stereotypes between one another, but also the people, us, that are watching it, we perhaps start having that same perception, little by little, to the point that you've been mentally defeated. And this is the perception that you have of your people, as opposed to you seeing remarkable scientists of the golden age of Islam, for example, or really successful businessmen in the Arab world. A constant example, a good representation of what the culture truly is like. No, you're seeing the fabricated image of someone that's trying to do something extremely targeted, so that your soul and your spirit is defeated. And you think that by default, this is what you're gonna end up being perceived as, because this is truly what your people are. I'm not gonna bother. I'm not gonna put effort into anything, because there's no role model for me to look up to. Yeah, that's media for you, Ibrahim.
I have a question. Since we're talking about media, and this is kind of, not a tangent, but like this is relevant, because we're going to talk about what we can do to overcome mental colonialism, right? But since we're talking about media, do you think there is any positive media out there that we can use? Maybe, people that we can look up to, influencers, maybe historical figures that can tell us or guide us through, these types of things? Because I'm sure I'm not going to claim that I'm the first person who's thought about this. There has to be someone before us, right?
I don't know, man. At the top of my head, I can't think of too many, but let me see what I can let me see what I can recollect. Perhaps you have Ibn al-Haytham, the father of modern optics and the true father of the scientific methods. You have al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra and the pioneer of algorithms. You have Ibn Sina a man whose book, Canon of Medicine, was taught as the primary text for education in the medical sciences for centuries. Or you have Ibn Khaldun, the father of sociology. You have Ibn Rushd, remarkable contribution in theological philosophy and epistemology in general. You have Jabir ibn al-Hayyan, the true father of chemistry. You have Ahmad Zuwail, the father of femtochemistry. The Middle East has so many fathers of that the rest of the world honestly should just start calling us daddy. Just putting it out.
I have no issues with that. Okay, I have a few names that I think people should be familiar with. And some of them, they have movies or documentaries that I would strongly recommend people to watch. Allama Iqbal is a poet and a philosopher that originates back in Pakistan. You should really read about him because, you know, in our culture, Allama is a title, is an honorary title that is given to someone who has achieved the highest level of scholarship and spirituality in Islamic theology. And he was a poet and a philosopher. For him to be given that title is not an ordinary thing. You should just investigate why was he given that title. Read about Ataullah Shah Bukhari. Who was he? What was his contribution? What did he do? These two people, they don't have any movies made yet, but I'm hoping that, you know, someone in the future would inspire us by making a movie that, you know, would shake us to our core by showing us what they did. Some of the people who have been televised, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he was the president and the founder of Pakistan. There is a very nice movie called Jinnah, was published in 1997, I believe. Highly recommended. I would say that these three people would be, you know, the foundation of the topic that we're talking about. But apart from that, I want to go further down because, you know, this is not something that, like, you know, the effect of a certain culture on our mentality is not something that we only suffered. Read about Bilal ibn Rabah. He was a companion of the Prophet. He was the first muezzin of our religion. There is a movie that was made called Bilal. It's an animated movie, so you can watch it with your kids. Try to watch these movies and put yourself in the shoes of those main characters. Think about what were the decisions that they were making. What was it that was going through their brains and minds when they were experiencing those events around them? Why were they fighting so hard against, you know, seemingly unimaginable and unfavorable events and causes? And yet they succeeded because they were determined. And I strongly believe that they worked very hard and they deserved the outcome because of the effort that they have put in. So read about these people. If you are not into reading, you can probably watch some of the documentaries that have been made, but they're highly, highly recommended.
If you're not into reading, you should start getting into it. Okay, not necessarily out of affinity or not necessarily out of interest of the art of reading. I used to hate reading. Okay, I had to force myself into it. But man, the things that you unlock when you unlock the ability to focus for a long time and read a concept and go back to chapter 1 and compare what you read in another chapter, it really offers you endless gifts. Start with a simple book that you're interested in about something that you want to learn and go from there. Okay, that's a sidetrack. I'm gonna try and flex my editing skills, or perhaps someone else's editing skills, by also adding some recommendations at the top of my head here and here and here and here. Those are pretty cool to check out. They could be books, they could be movies. We'll see what we include later on. Something I'd like to circumvent back to, Sir Ibrahim, just for a very tiny fraction of a second. Language, because I remember you asked me about that, but I didn't quite elaborate. Mm-hmm. People underestimate the importance of language, and that's something that mental colonization truly affects the most. It targets your ability to be able to speak your own language, because there are particular ideas in your own language that simply do not exist in different ones. An example that me and Ibrahim have discussed before, a word I taught him was the word in the Egyptian dialect, gada. Okay. And I tried so hard to explain it in English, it didn't quite fit right, to the point that I told him, hey, let's just, whenever the situation shows up, I'm just gonna use the word, and then perhaps you can create a framework of what the word gada means. And so there are some things that are just not equally translatable, okay? And when you're when you start losing the words to express these concepts, you lack the ability to praise them. And when you lack the ability to praise something, society doesn't feel or doesn't find a need to glorify it and try to learn it or try to embed it into their children's perspectives or personality. And so slowly, it erodes the culture of your people, because the things that are truly remarkable about your culture, you're unable to communicate about anymore because you've lost the faculty, you've lost the tools to be able to talk about these things. And so moving from there, when you want to talk about these remarkable things in your society, it's done. It's done. Khalas. You lose them over time, and there's no going back. That's one thing. And it doesn't really help that on the other side of the lobby, you have, I can give an exact example. In Egypt, for example, mothers from the aristocratic class, from a higher socioeconomic status, they not only glorify their children being able to speak English, which is fine, by the way. You know a different language, you're bilingual, that's great. No, it's not just that. But the fact that they're able to speak good English, but a horrible Arabic, they find that cute. They find that something to be proud of. And, I find no better situation to make use of this thing by a beautiful person called Muhammad Hijab. I hope a bunch of you have been exposed.
Are you sick in the mind? Are you that mentally enslaved and intellectually subservient and intellectually molested and ideologically molested? You really should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you, Muhammad Hijab. Quick advertisement. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was intense.
That's what I'd like to say about that.
When you were talking, in the back of my head, I was thinking, well, obviously there are different perspectives. There is going to be people who are going to disagree with. So my question was like, what would you say to the people who disagree with that? And you just popped that up, and I was like, okay, all right. That answers my question very well.
Yeah, no, that's just for humorous purposes. But no, I don't particularly have malice, intent, or malevolence towards the people that do that, because I understand that they're in their mind that they're trying to do the best for their children, but realize the harm that you're doing to your own society in that form. If you want to leave Egypt, if you want to leave the Arab world and you want to migrate somewhere else, okay, that's fine. Take your family and leave. But please do not harm the society that you're in by spreading these perspectives, by spreading these views and being proud of them outright.
So just to echo what Amr said, we cannot have malice intent towards the people who have thought about or think like that, because as we've mentioned, we've been victims of this, right? So we're not going to be arrogant about this and say, oh, we're better than those who don't think like us. That is not the case. But what we're saying is that at the very least, people should think about this issue. It is inherent in our culture, and to deny it after thinking about it is just, like crazy to me. To deny that it is not an issue. So I would say that our purpose at this stage is just to entice this thought process so that people start thinking about this. And, just to wrap this up, because we've already talked about 3 different, examples as to where the issue rises from. But at this stage, I want to talk a bit about what can we do to overcome this mental colonialism, this issue of mental colonialism. And since we've talked about 3 problems, which is, a problem from the educational system, the problem in our media representation, and then the language, the simplest thing that we can do is just address these 3 issues. There should be an educational reform in our countries. The way we educate our kids should change. Importing curriculums from Western countries is not the best solution. I mean, if their curriculum is effective, and the studies show that they are effective, we should modify them to suit our culture and our heritage. I mean, why are we reading the history of the European colonizers? That never made sense to me. Why am I reading their history? Their history is not relevant to me. Tell me the history about my people. What did my people do? Where are our heroes? Where are our heroes? I want to know about them. What did they do? What is it that they did? What did they achieve? And how can I become like them? Because reading about the Europeans, are you telling me that I should become like them? I can never become like them. I can never become white. And they, like, look at the media. They don't want us to be like them. So we have all the reasons to, embrace who we are, embrace our culture, embrace our heritage. And that starts at a very early age. Like, think about your kids. If you are becoming a parent or if you already are a parent, what is it that you can do? It doesn't have to be extremely big. Something as small as just like, telling them a story about someone from a historical figure or an event that has happened in the country. Or just like, for my Pakistani brothers, like, or sisters, just ask yourself, why did Pakistan came into existence? Just read that history. I mean, an entire country came into existence during World War I and World War II. And our history is buried under, these tragic events that happened during World War II. But that doesn't mean that our history is irrelevant. It is only irrelevant because we made it so, which is unfortunate. So from educational you want to say something else?
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, so from an educational perspective, that's what I'm going to say. And from the media representation, again, try to be mindful of the media content that you are watching. Don't always watch it for entertainment. Try to watch something every now and then that would give you some information and insight, maybe a documentary or something. And when you're watching it, be mindfully present and put yourself in the shoes of the people or the historical figures that they're talking about, and try to think, what is the decisions that you are going to make? Did they make the right decisions? How could you have made a better decision? And then ask, would that decision really be the right decision, or was their decision the best one that they could have made in that perspective? It is just going to unlock a different perception in your mindset, right? And from the language, read more about, your own language. Read in your own language. Read the poetry. There's the best and the most beautiful thing about the language that represents a language is poetry. Like, I am not an Arab, but I have no issues putting my hands down and saying the best poetry out there out of all languages is Arabic poetry. It just cannot be beaten. The eloquency in the Arabic language is just superior to all other languages. So for the Arabs, read the poetry in your own language so that you get to understand the beauty of your language. And then from that, you will start to unlock why is it that your language evolved into what it is today. And that is going to give you a perception. And I'm going to say the same to, the Punjabi and the Pakistani people who are speaking their own dialects. Try to embrace them. Don't be ashamed of it. Because if you are ashamed, you are going to lose that language. And with it, you're going to lose a sense of expression. I'm a Punjabi, and I only learned how to speak Punjabi when I was maybe in my teens. Before that, I did not know how to speak Punjabi. And, it's not like now when I'm angry, the only way that I prefer to express myself is in a Punjabi language. That doesn't mean that I never used to get angry before my teenage years. I used to get angry, but the way I used to express is different because it's just marvelous when you are representing or expressing your anger in a Punjabi. It's just like it calms you down, it expresses you. There is eloquency in anger in Punjabi. That's the beauty of my language. So I'm not just joking. I mean it. Like learn your language, embrace it. And there are a lot of people who are working towards preserving their language within your country. I'm sure of it because I did a quick search and I found that there are people in the Arab countries, people in Egypt, people in Pakistan, people in Punjab, in Sindh. They're small NGOs that they're doing their best to preserve these languages, and alongside that languages, they're trying to preserve their culture and heritage because all of this goes hand in hand. This is not all that you can. Sorry, I'm just gonna give it up to you. This is not all that you can do. There is more. I'm going to let Amr to elaborate on what I have said, and if he has more examples on what you can do to defeat this mental colonialism, at the very least on an individual level, then you should start with that. You don't necessarily have to do something that is societally changing, right?
We just segued directly into the solutions part to this huge issue of mental colonialism. And before that, I just want to remark that, man, if you're Pakistani and you're shying away from your culture, what the hell, man? What the hell? I swear to God, every time I meet a Pakistani here in New York, whether it's on the street, in a restaurant, wherever it is, the first thing I say, Pakistan's in the bud. The first thing, okay? The generosity that I experience every time, and I swear I'm not saying this because you're my friend, every time I meet a Pakistani, the way that they greet me with a smile, with warmth, and the fact that they're not stuck up when they're interacting with people, and then the generosity in whatever avenue, whether it's the generosity in giving you directions, the generosity in wanting you to try a particular food from their culture. You can look at the tour videos of Pakistan and see how people are mesmerized by the type of treatment that they receive. People are treated like kings when you're just a normal human being. And it's not because these people want something from you. No, 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 no. It's something that cannot be explained. You have to experience it. Fortunately, I have remarkable friends like Ibrahim that have gave me a first-hand view of what that Pakistani generosity is like. So please wake up. And another comment that I had about like the education thing, maybe one of the ways to have people of our culture realize that our history is actually deep and has a lot of breadth is not only to shove content down their throats, but to present it in an interesting way. I mean, there needs to be truly some reform in the way that we tell students, to tell young Arabs, young Middle Easterners, why their culture is amazing, not just because they need to memorize it and solve it on a test. No, no. And this could be, by the way, a reform in education, could be a reform in the type of content that we see on the media. Social media is doing wonderfully right now. Absolutely wonderfully. I'm going to put something here. You were talking about poetry, Ibrahim. There's this account of this guy who is kind of revamping the romanticizing of the idea of Arabic poetry, and he's showcasing to the world why it's beautiful. And it's initiatives like these that helps with that. For me, is the practical solution, what you can start doing today, here and now. So it's nice to know that Fatima Al-Fihri was the founder of the first university, or the longest running university in the world, in Morocco, Tahiyya al-Maghrib, University of Al-Qarawiyyin. It's good to know that, but in real life, when you're interacting with people, a solution to combat mental colonialism in your hand is by referring to your culture rather than referring to something that is completely outside of you. Let me elaborate. We have this this band of brothers in Egypt called the Double Zoksh. Okay, local music, Egyptian local music, stuff you would hear on the street. I personally love it. I'm a huge fan. Okay, some people look down upon it because it's different from Kulthum. These days, what happened to music these days? I love it. I personally love it. One of the very simple things that they do when they start their songs, every single song, you know how DJ Khaled starts his song by saying DJ Khaled, and then he goes into the song? These guys start by saying Cairo, or Cairo, to be specific. And it's little things like this, very subtle, but when you hear this type of representation in normal conversations, in music and the TV and social media, when you and your friend are having a conversation and he or she brings up an example of something in your culture rather than something in the West from a different philosopher, for example, when relevant, of course, without being, excessively biased, you become familiar and comfortable with the idea that, hey, maybe we have something to talk about here in this region of the world. And maybe we don't have to import all the ideas from a different side of the world. So it's changes in your language. Give examples of remarkable philosophers, remarkable ideas that were born in this region rather than constantly speaking about it elsewhere. And that way, you've educated yourself and you've combated your own mental colonialism, and you've helped spread the idea to other people that, hey, maybe we're not that bad after all. As a matter of fact, we're quite remarkable. We just haven't been educated enough about it. And this is why I ask everyone to read. You cannot wait for the education system to be reformed. What you can do is pick up a book, something like the House of Wisdom by Jabr al-Khalili. This is something I'm reading now, which is really, really nice. Or Lost Islamic History. Again, we'll put both of them somewhere here. Really good books for you to learn about your culture and your history, to be able to include it in your everyday conversation. That's why representation in this regard matters. Ibrahim, I'll give it back to you. I've been blabbing for way too long.
Okay. Well, aside from all of this, I think at this stage we've given people enough material to think about, enough things, enough thoughts to play around with, and I think with some of the media examples, the books, and the people that we have given, they can carry on with this research and be mesmerized by all the people that we have read about, and the contributions that they have done and everything that they have given us. to be inspired. Like it's not fair that we don't at the very least acknowledge these people. So just to wrap this all up, I want to take us back and recap as to why mental colonialism is.
Yeah.
What are the main points of discussion in this podcast? Like, what is it that we should take away from this? First of all, you should just be mindful about certain things that are affecting you in daily life, the decisions that you're making, because certain decisions that you make might have long-term effect. Like, for example, where are you going to settle later on in life? Where do you want to invest, open your business? Where do you want to work, etc.? And maybe it would seem excessive, but truthfully, it is not. If these influences carry on with you in life, you're going to end up in a very different place than if you're thinking in a way that I and Amr started to think, right? Think about how you can contribute to fixing this issue. Doesn't have to be on a societal level. It starts with you yourself at an individual level. And if you have achieved thinking actively about this, then start by including those who are around you. Maybe it will be difficult to introduce this concept to those who are older than you, like your parents or grandparents, but you can start with your siblings, your friends, your neighbors. Like, just introduce people to this concept. Like, whenever you see someone who's been mentally colonized and he's looking down upon his own culture and he's ashamed of being a certain type or way or just of his looks, try to hold them there and explaining to them, like, this is like, try to just tell them, embrace yourself, embrace your culture, embrace who you are. Try to understand who you are so that you can embrace your identity, because we all have these identity crises, and some of it is being influenced by this mental colonialism.
Are you sick in the mind? Are you that mentally enslaved?
Sorry, Brian.
Or you can show him this. Or you can show him this.
Never again. Last time.
And I want to reiterate the importance of understanding and combating the mental colonialism, because especially for the youth, right? Because I'm targeting the youth in particular because they are the future, right? And if all of us are just leaving our countries and forgetting who we are and what we are, who's going to look back at our countries? Like, what is it that we should feel proud of? Like, what is it that we're representing? There's no one. It's us. We are the future of our countries. And if we don't have that sense of pride, and like speaking as a Pakistani, looking at our current political situation and the economical situation, I know it's not great. It is horrible. It is bad. But Allah taught us in our religion not to be pessimistic and not to look on the negative side of things. You should be positive, and you should induce that positivity around you, because if you lose hope, then there is no one else who's going to look after our own home countries. And this doesn't just go for Pakistani. I'm addressing to the Pakistani people, but this is not a disease that only inflicting Pakistani people in particular. I'm speaking this out to the Egyptians, to the Pakistanis, to our neighboring countries, to the Indians as well, like all of the people around us. Like, try to think about these types of things. If you don't know if you fall into that category, just ask yourself, was my country colonized in the past or not? Yes, you're probably part of mental colonialism, and I don't think there is a country that has never been colonized at a certain stage. So I'm sure that this is going to spark an interesting perspective in your mindset the more you entertain it.
Yeah, and never underestimate the effect that you can have as an individual on your society. So it's one thing to work on yourself, of course, which is great. And if you've done that, you've done the bare minimum, which is good, to wake yourself up. But truly, don't think that you're unable to affect other people. I mean, the Islamic Empire in its prime was not built in a day. It took a lot of effort for us to reach that, let's say, the golden age in the Abbasid area, to be able to create something that's so remarkable that we can look back at and be extremely proud of, and see influences of trickle down in every realm of society, regardless of what everyone tries to tell you. So everything normally that is remarkable starts with a couple of individuals. So if it's not for you to see in your own lifetime, someone else will pick up the track to continue this effort, so that your children, your grandchildren, so on and so forth, don't have to suffer the same unnecessary effort that you went through to apply for a visa, to speak to an immigration officer that's, talking to you in a condescending manner. You don't have to go outside and get a different citizenship so that you can come back into your country, work with a higher pay simply because you have a different colored passport now. Maybe when you start changing things here and now, this is when massive change starts occurring. Good luck.
Both of us. Good luck to you.
Habibi. And with that, I believe, Mr. Ibrahim, we have covered all of the facets that we wanted to discuss of mental colonialism, although this actually requires at least 2 more episodes to fully grasp how it affects us. But again, the purpose of this episode was to just spark that interest so that people can look further themselves and see how it affects them differently. Ibrahim, if you have any last words.
Yes, indeed. The purpose of this was to introduce this term and to spark this thought process in everyone around us, because we realized that our journey started because someone, made us think about this. Or if not someone, then something, maybe an incident in our life caused us to think about this deeply, right? So, and for some of us, it was just, the intervention of a higher being, which is Allah. So think about this, and I hope that this has been useful and entertaining for all of you. I want to thank you all for joining us once again in the Dunes podcast, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.